What is a story you have been dying to tell? Give it to me. So when my youngest daughter was maybe 4 years old, she and I headed to the shopping mall one afternoon. While there, I have to pee and realize I have no choice. I have to take her into the men's room with me. I go into a stall, usually reserved for people sitting down to do their business. And with my kids standing behind me, I unzip and start peeing. She edges forward to look at my equipment, which she hadn't ever seen before. And after staring at it, she points and says, "Daddy, is that your pee-pee?" I realize there's about 10 other guys in the quiet bathroom who are certainly listening, and I feel all self-conscious. I try and stay all calm and nonchalant and stuff and say, yes, honey. That's my pee-pee." She tightens her neck and retreats a couple of inches and says, "Well, it sure is ugly." The whole room erupted in laughter. Every guy in the place was laughing his ass off, including me. Apparently, when I was little, I too had a trip to the men's room with my dad, wherein, when someone else occupied the stall next to us, I whispered loudly, "Daddy, is that man pooping? Don't let him poop. I don't want him to poop. Tell him to go away." And laughter ensued. Short version, I almost hit 2 little boys while driving to the mall. Ages 2 and 4. They were filthy and dressed only in their underwear. No shoes, shirt, coats, nothing. And literally standing in the street on a cold, rainy Florida fall morning. I would have hit them if the van in front of me hadn't reacted so suddenly. I followed suit and swerved, missed them by inches. Turns out their mother was a loser who was passed out on drugs that morning, and these 2 little boys were left to fend for themselves. So somehow they wandered their way onto one of the busiest roads during morning rush hour. What was originally a short trip to the mall ended up with me almost killing 2 babies, then assisting the police once they arrived. The boys were petrified of the police, and giving my testimony to the district attorney's office. A year later, I received a call from the dad in Ohio who had been trying to get custody of the kids for the past 2 years. Turns out my testimony was instrumental in convincing the judge to grant him full custody, and he called to thank me. Good guy, Dad. TLDR, some mothers don't deserve a happy Mother's Day. Edit to thank everyone for the karma, and to add details. It was an unusually cold and wet morning for Florida, mid-40s. I just dropped off my 7-year-old son at elementary school and had my 4-year-old daughter with me in the car. It was cold enough for us to wear long sleeves and semi-heavy jackets. Definitely not warm enough for just underwear. And add to that the cold, intermittent rain. It's been many years since this happened, and retelling the story here brought back the same sinking feeling of horror that I felt the moment I realized just how close I came to hitting the little boys. That morning was full of emotions. Relief that they were okay, confusion, the overwhelming mother bear feeling to protect these 2 little lives, and finally, disgust and revulsion upon seeing where they had been living. Several police squad cars arrived at the office where we had taken the boys, and as it turns out, one of the officers was familiar with the boys. Upon seeing the police, the smallest boy tightened his death grip around my neck, and the 4-year-old was now clinging to my leg. They were terrified and crying loudly. Of course, my daughter thought all of the excitement was a great adventure, and she kept asking why the boys weren't dressed. Why were they crying? Why did they smell so bad? Both boys smelled strongly of urine, and if we could take them home with us. The entire situation was unreal and profoundly sad. Since the boys were in such distress, the police officer in charge asked if I could help them by putting the boys in my car and following them to their mother's apartment. With 1 squad car in front and 2 behind me, we traveled maybe 7 or 8 blocks down a road that ran next to the industrial building we'd just been in. By this time, the boys had calmed down some and were playing with my daughter and her toys in the back seat. We drove up to a row of neglected townhouses, the worst one being the boys' home. The small front yard was a mess of wet garbage, appliances, dirty toys, and mud. There was a dirty white sheet hanging in the large downstairs open window. The sheet was blowing out the window since there wasn't a screen. The front door was wide open. From my car, I could see through the open window all the way to the back of the townhouse, where there was another open window and door. The inside of the townhouse didn't appear to be any better than the outside. No furniture to speak of, just garbage, clothes, and toys strewn about. The officers asked me to stay with the boys in the car while they investigated the home, and they added that someone with Child Protective Services was on their way. Just about the time CPS arrived, the officer in charge came out of the house and told me they'd found the mother passed out on the floor in an upstairs bedroom. We managed to get the boys in the CPS van without too much drama. The officer then asked me to leave the scene since the mother was awakened but violent. She was being arrested and he didn't want my daughter to witness that. I wholeheartedly agreed. It wasn't until I drove away that I noticed how badly I was shaking. That's when I began to cry. Thank you for taking the time to testify. You essentially saved those boys' lives. So amazing that you got a follow-up from the dad.
I was glad to do it. Anything for those sweet boys. I added more details to the original post. Thank you for your positive comments.
This is my father's story. In 1975, he was 18 years old. The Lao monarchy had fallen and communism had taken over. My family and almost everyone who was Hmong, minority group in Laos, had allied themselves with the Royal Lao Army and the American CIA. When the Kingdom of Laos fell, the new communist government released a statement saying they would exterminate the Hmong people to the last root. Because my grandfather was a ranked official under General Vung Pao, the Hmong leader, he feared for the life of his family. When evacuation took place in mid-May 1975, my grandparents and their 11 children were not allowed to board the planes, as all the aircraft were packed to full capacity. They were told more planes would be coming, but none returned. So my grandfather decided that the only way to save his family was to travel by foot into Thailand. While traveling through the jungles of Laos, my family were with other groups of Hmong people. A family in the group had 3 kids who were no older than 2 years old. Halfway through the trek, the patriarch of the other family comes to my dad and asks if my dad could help carry his son, who barely knew how to crawl. My dad said yes. But my grandfather said if the baby started to cry or soldiers were seen, my father would no longer carry the baby. The other man agreed, as it was a desperate time. As they made their way across the jungle, they stumbled across a group of communist soldiers. Shots were fired and everyone ran. My dad remembers the father of the baby being shot dead, and another child about 10 or 11 dying in front of him. My dad continued to run with the baby in his arm. After running for a while, my dad was completely separated from his family. He was alone with a baby. He walks through the jungle towards Thailand, sobbing, thinking his family were all dead. After a few days, he stumbles across a herd of 4 elephants. They are trumpeting very loudly. As my dad moves closer, he sees that an elephant had died and her front leg was destroyed, most likely due to a mine. He carries on, but the baby he's carrying is very hungry and crying. My father has been feeding the baby water and things he can find from the jungle floor. My dad's worst fear is realized when he sees 3 communist soldiers. They can hear the baby and run towards my dad. My dad hides the baby under a bush and leaves. As my dad walks away, he can't forgive himself for leaving the baby, so he returns. He finds himself in front of the soldiers. They have him on his knees and tell him that they are going to kill him and the child. My dad pleads with them in Lao. Luckily, my dad was carrying my grandparents' silver, so he bargains with them and they escape with their lives. Once at the Thai-Lao border, he had to cross the Mekong River to the other side. Desperately, the current was fast and the water was murky. Because he couldn't swim with the baby with him, he decided to build a makeshift raft. As he searches for supplies, he comes upon a mass grave of 20 to 30 dead Hmong people by the riverbed. He panics and heads further south, but yet again, soldiers emerge, and the only thing he could do was jump into the river, so he plunges in with the baby. As he struggles to make his way to the other side, they open fire at him in the water. The strong current helps him and takes him further from the soldiers. He finally gets into Thailand and finds that the baby is not breathing. My dad tries desperately to revive the baby. He tries everything, but finally he smacks the baby on the back a couple of times, and it comes back to life. They walk on and finally arrive at a refugee camp. My dad cannot find his parents or siblings anywhere. He cries, thinking they have died. Luckily, my dad finds his uncle, Grandpa's younger first cousin, there. My dad hands over the baby to his aunt to breastfeed, since she too has an infant. My grandparents arrive at the same camp about 2 weeks later. My dad has never been so happy in his life to see his family, although he discovers his 5-year-older brother had been shot and died from his wounds. Fast forward to 2014. My father is now 57 years old, and he has 4 kids of his own, and a boy due this month on the 19th. The baby he carried across into Thailand was adopted by his uncle and aunt. I now call him Uncle Johnny. Uncle Johnny got married and now has 3 kids of his own.
Thank you so much for watching until the end. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next videos. In the meantime, check out the other ones. They're already waiting for you. Share your thoughts on this topic in the comments and tell your own stories. Wishing you a great day, and see you in the next one. Bye-bye.